Woo-ha! Live. Hello, Packers fans. It's a beautiful April day. Had to think about which month it is because it does not feel like April right now. We are here. We are back in the best darn location in the broadcast business. No budget. You don't need a budget when you got the best stadium in the world behind you.
I was told we were going to be catered here in my trailer. That's not happening. We're recording already. Yeah. Thanks, friends. It's
we can get Conop on the phone.
Yes.
Conop.
Conop. They have their hands on a lot. It seems like.
I'm holding this like a fucking microphone.
It helps with the muscle memory. So much is going on. So much activity,
dude. I mean, it came out at us in a flurry, man. This was an unexpectedly active week in terms of off season. I mean, I didn't even realize Ted was talking this morning. A real TED talk. We'll talk Ted at length later on in this episode, but
he very well may be. Well, he probably is right there.
He's probably there.
So for a little context, believe it or not, it is late April, and draft is right around the corner. We have some exciting stuff coming up for you on that tip. I have a great interview coming up, set up by my main man, Maddie.
Very excited for this interview.
And the schedule was released yesterday, and there was just some kind of team stuff going on internal. Some of an unfortunate happening. Lee Rummel passed.
Lee Rummel, rest in peace.
Yeah.
Team historian, man.
Really.
Wildlife.
Ooh.
Oh, there they go.
They are two rabbits. Look like they're finding a kind of nice little cozy spot to make some more rabbits.
We just interrupted.
But as we talk about life there, the passing on the other side of Lee Rummel, from all accounts, never got a chance to meet him.
No, me neither. But you knew people who met him. Know people who met him.
Yeah, a couple people. My dad included. My dad did some work with the Packers down on the field, so just over the years got to know him, and it was always, hey, Bazooka Bob Burns, because there was apparently some old radio personality named Bazooka Bob Burns, so it was kind of that guy. And from all accounts, from what my dad has said and a couple co-workers that I have that worked with him, just what you heard is pretty much true. Just a guy that really loved the Packers, talked to everybody the same, was truly a nice guy, and that he made it to 90. Hey, that's a pretty damn good run.
To Lee. Handed over team historian reins to Cliff Crystal a couple years ago. Cliff is doing very well in it, but Lee will be remembered. He'll go down with the team that he loves so much, man.
Yeah. It would have been. Would have liked to sit in his living room for just to kind of pick his brain.
It would have been a hell of a chat.
Yeah, that would have been a hell of an episode. Set the camera on him.
Dang.
Who knows?
Well, we'll keep the interviews going.
But maybe I thought maybe that will give us the impetus to think. And if anybody has an ideas about somebody that you kind of think is, doesn't, not an ex-player or an ex-coach or necessarily someone that you saw on the TV, but someone that is, true green and gold that, maybe have some stories to tell, things that you wouldn't necessarily hear anywhere else. We'd like to hear and think about maybe sitting down if they're willing to talk and ask some questions, because I mean, there's things you could have probably got from Lee that you could not have gotten from anywhere else. I mean, having worked with Curly and having some of that background and everything, it's pretty...
Ton of background, man.
Pretty fascinating.
I mean, yeah, you can have your player interviews, your coach interviews. Give us the fringe, man.
Yes.
So, without further ado, is there any more ado?
We operate on the fringe of legality. What? Sorry.
That too. We will be back after this interview with our season predictions. Oh yeah,
because the schedule's out.
Pre-draft season predictions, totally.
But before that is coming up is a little drafty poo, a little Ted Magic. So
a little bit of drafty poo.
To pick one's brain on that, we've
got Scott McKenna from the Talkin' Smack blog. Very excited, and he knows a whole lot more about most things than we probably do. So without further ado. Scott. Yeah.
And we're joined now by Scott McKenna joining us on the phone with a whole look at the draft. Scott, how you doing, man? I'm great. You? Doing very good. Just excited about all the stuff that's happened and schedule release, what's coming up next, and obviously everybody's, especially being Ted Thompson's football team, all eyes on the draft. Have to be jazzed for what's about to happen here over the next week with 27 open spots on the roster. You know that Thompson is salivating at the opportunity to really build depth from within and to add to the overall youth of the roster. And he's stoked, and I think as fans of the Green Bay Packers, it's a great time of year leading into the draft weekend. I think I actually saw him wiping drool off his chin this morning at a live interview. Did you get a chance to see that? I didn't. I was traveling and haven't had the opportunity to check it out or get caught up on it at all. But did he? I'm sure he told you all of his draft, his draft game plan, and we're all caught up, right? He actually showed us a picture of his draft board. Very transparent. I like it. There was a choice quote that I grabbed right near the end. The beauty of this particular business is the uncertainty. So Ted likes stuff, and we can joke about it. We'll never know what he's going to do going into it. But I guess it sure is fun to speculate. So thanks for joining us. I sent you that list. Do a little chat about. But first, I kind of want to get an idea of how to kind of go into look at college players and stuff. Are you a big college football fan? Do you watch a lot of college ball? It's funny because growing up in Green Bay, I really was more tied to the NFL game. But as I've aged, I'll say that I've become less attracted to the NFL game as the rules change, and more just a diehard Green Bay Packer fan. And when I watch college football, which I do in abundance, I really just watch to scout players that I think would fit the Green Bay Packers. So, that's really what I do. I have a DVR that's loaded with college football games and all the bowl games, and then you get into the Senior Bowl and the East-West Shrine game and the NFLPA Bowl, and when they have the practices televised and the recap shows. I really stay close to that stuff and make sure that I watch forward through those and pay significant attention to the type of players that I think fit the system of the Green Bay Packers. And really, when I watch football, it's with one thing in mind. It's, yes, I enjoy the game, but how does it impact the Packers? And I'm a fan.
So I bet you've enjoyed the proliferation of kind of showing the scouting combine all day on TV and more access. And I think even Ted today, he touched on, he said, I'm not having to do as much travel because they can have a pro day in anywhere USA, and the video is sent back to me in beautiful high def with all the angles the next day. So, and I guess same for you. Instead of today, you can actually be checking in on the video feed. You can go to a website and watch these grown spots.
It's funny because I don't watch much of the combine, to be honest. I will look at what the numbers are when it's all said and done, but seeing a guy in his tights doesn't show me much for the way that I watch football. But so I don't pay much attention to the combine, and I'll look at a 40 time or a bench press or how long guys' arms are. I'll be interested in that depending on the position, but I don't pay much attention to that. I pay more attention to how does a guy play when I like to say, how does a guy play when the lights are on? How does a guy perform when When it's a big game scenario, when he's in his pads and he's mano a mano against an opponent in the big game situation, those are the types of games that I watch. If you want to scout somebody, you look at somebody from LSU. Well, the first tape you should watch is how did he perform when he played Alabama. And then you talk about somebody from Alabama, how have they performed in those SEC championship games, or how did he perform when they were playing for a national title? And I think that there's so much carryover as to how they play in a big game to bring that over to the NFL. As you need to bring that same sort of intensity on a weekly basis as you do in those ever important college football games.
So I've got this great image of you kicking back, watching your DVR games with some delicious beer. Am I far off?
Generally, a sour is sitting next to me that's had probably 12 to 18 months of age to it. I like to age my beer. And, so heavy imperial stouts and sours are generally my direction, unless it's going to be a uniquely released hop beer that I can dive into. So yeah, I absolutely like to, during the off season, I like to turn on a important game that I had DVR'd and to truly turn back and check it out. If you want to, it always makes me laugh. And, and draftbreakdown.com, first and foremost, is just an awesome website. But, before that, I just wonder how people did homework on truly having an opinion on a player. And I have always said that I can't ever comment on somebody that I haven't watched play. So if I haven't, been able to watch one of their games or tape one of their games in season, or, Draft Breakdown does make it significantly easier for people to be doing homework and to pay less attention during the season. But, if you haven't studied the person yourself or watched them yourself, then you're likely just stealing somebody else's idea or somebody else's take based on what you read about this guy. And that's just never been my philosophy or my style. And, I didn't become akin to Draft Breakdown, until I think last year. And, so I've always taken the strategy of, taping games and catching up with it. And, I'm not a huge TV guy if it's not football. So in February, things can get kind of quiet. And, I find that is a good time to stay involved with the college game and to catch up on players that I had targeted throughout the year as prospects that might interest the Packers come draft season.
Well, that being said, has there been who the Packers not taking where you kind of couldn't help but kind of follow their NFL career after you kind of did your own scouting?
It's funny because one guy that there's over the last 2 years, there's been, two guys that I was just enamored with. And last year it was Dayon Buchanan, who I think is going to potentially change the way that the NFL is played. And I know that on the defensive side of the ball, and I know that sounds like it's really big words, but what you see with what Arizona did with Buchanan is they essentially have him playing inside linebacker. And I think you might see the Packers do a little bit of that with Sean Richardson this year. Bigger safety, trying to add speed to the field. And, I think if you watch the Cardinals play defense in what is now a spread them out offense, you need speed. And if he's coming at you and he's stepping into a hole against a running back, he's going to make the play. But it also helps you out in pass defense. And I think that, we're going to see a wave here in the near future in the NFL where you may have that bigger safety playing an inside linebacker position in what would essentially be a 3-4 defense. I think that when you saw Clay Matthews' impact, the speed was really the big thing that he brought to the middle of the field. And then the year before, a guy that didn't get to the Packers, but I was just all about him, and I loved him all year. Was Sheldon Richardson, and he was a guy that even when you looked at the quote unquote mock drafts that you see online, and they all had him as a second or a third round pick, and I kind of scratched my head and said, well, they've either not watched him, or they haven't done their homework, or they're not paying attention, because this guy is going to be a superstar. And throughout the entire draft or college season, I watched almost every one of his games when he was in college and in his last year, and I just became more enamored with him with each week that passed by. And all the draft websites that we follow, they all had him largely as a late first round pick, second to third round pick throughout the year, and I just saw him as a guy that would be a top 10 to 15 pick, and I couldn't believe that he was listed where he was listed at the time. So the Packers didn't have a chance to get him, but he's a guy that I love to watch him play. I think he's an impact player, and he's the type of player that really the Packers could certainly use, and I think they may have thought they were getting someone like them when they drafted Jarrell Worthy a couple of years ago in 2012. So, I would say that, there's guys that you become attracted to them when you watch them play enough in college, and this year I will say the guy that I watched throughout the majority of the year was Haoli Kitaha from Washington, and I was just really attracted to the Washington defense the entire year. I loved Marcus Peters. I think he's going to be a stud. Danny Shelton is if you could give me two guys out of this draft that I think would immediately benefit the Packers more than anybody, I'd say number one would be Trey Waynes, and number two would be Danny Shelton. I would love to have either of them in some sort of scenario to have them come to the Packers, and Shelton was a guy that I really paid a lot of attention to. Kitaha and Shaq Thompson, who played a lot of time on the offensive side of the ball, and it was really interesting to watch that Washington defense throughout this year.
Cool. I guess just one other kind of question
just like your overall kind of strategy. Have there been any guys in recent years where you just had a huge reaction to the Packers drafting them, positive or negative? I mean, where I jumped up and started dancing when the Packers drafted Eddie Lacy. I was so floored. But I mean, anybody who you were just like, just not happy about or just thrilled about, and
Absolutely. Well, it's funny because I've got a blog that I put out there, I get fairly active some years more than others. But prior to the 2012 draft, I was, which turned out to be one of the more disappointing across the board drafts out there thus far. Daniels is a total superstar, and I think Hayward's going to have a really good career with the Packers, and the jury's still out on if Perry can make something of his career in Green Bay. But Nick Perry was a guy that I watched and I targeted. In fact, I went to see him play when they played Colorado. I live out in Denver now. I went to Boulder when they played the game. I got into the stadium early. He was the type of guy that, I even brought my camera to take pictures. I told my wife that Nick Perry was going to be a Packer. And I thought that he translated really, really, really well. So I was uber stoked when they drafted him. I had wrote that I thought that Jarrell Worthy could have been in my blog I wrote that Jarrell Worthy I thought could have been a Packer first round pick, but I thought he'd get drafted before the Packers selected in the first round. We know they traded up to get him in round two. And then I had targeted as my second round pick for the Packers that year. I had listed Casey Hayward. I loved Hayward's game when he was at Vanderbilt. I really thought that he was the type of player that could play both on the outside and on the inside. And I thought that he reminded me in a lot of ways when he was in college of Tramon Williams. He he hasn't shown or been maybe given the opportunity to prove that he can play on the outside in the NFL. But he's a playmaker. He's a ball hawk, and he was a guy I was jazzed when the Packers signed in 2012. And I will say that I had also listed B.J. Coleman as a guy that I thought the Packers were going to draft. So after the 2012 draft, and this might say something about me and me being able to make projections not very good as players that I think would translate, but there were a couple of guys that I just thought would be, big-time players in the NFL, and, we know that Coleman didn't work out. I thought he might. I was really optimistic about that. I was super, super excited about Casey Hayward, and I still am really excited about what I think Hayward can bring to the table, but I thought that 2012 draft, Thompson really hit a home run, and it hasn't turned out that way. Also, like you, I think in 2013, you just had to love the players that Thompson had brought to the table, and Lacy was the kind of guy that to get him. I didn't want him in the first round. I didn't see him as a first round guy because of his injury history, and I was concerned about that. But when he was on the board in the second round, it was like you had to draft Eddie Lacy. He was a no-brainer, and he's such a likable guy that there was no doubt about it that at that stage there was a lot of reason to be very excited about it.
I find it fascinating. I agree, and looking at it, because with drafts, I think you can get caught up in so much immeasurables, and when you talk about watching how these guys play under the light and really seeing what the rubber meets the road, and so many guys that you've seen were steals in late rounds or guys who were early rounds. I mean, I guess especially you're interested in looking at a player or teams or whatever from how would they fit the Green Bay Packers. In terms of this draft class, the Green Bay Packers, what is your kind of overall view of depth, top-heavy areas of need? Everybody says they don't draft need, but I mean, are you draft class? Is there some holes? I mean, overall, what do you think?
It's an awesome question, man. I like that style and that approach, and it's a good way to look at it. And I don't think that take is taken enough when you hear people talk about the Packers' approach heading into the draft. I think it doesn't go that direct and to the point. And I really think that what's cool about this draft and exciting about this draft is that the Packers clearly have a couple of huge holes that need to get filled. I think that with all the open spots, just purely from a numbers standpoint, Thompson has a lot of holes that he has to fill. I mean, he's got 27 open roster spots. And with that being said, you look at the cornerback position. And the Packers, you want to be excited about Goodson, but frankly, at this stage, I think as a fan, we weren't that. I don't go to the practices anymore. I can't. I'm in Colorado. So you don't get to see what a guy like Goodson can do. But based on everything you read, and then the limited opportunities that we got to see him in the preseason, it just there wasn't a lot to be overly enthused about from what we saw then. I thought he had the makings of being a real strong special teams gunner. He looked like he could be a natural replacement for Jarrett Bush at that space. With that being said, I think that at cornerback, there's a huge opportunity for somebody to be able to step in and make an impact in year one. Thankfully, I think that this year's cornerback class is littered with goodness. I think there's a lot of players that could step in and potentially make an impact. And I really am of the belief that in the first two rounds, the Green Bay Packers have to draft a cornerback. And I really love Jalen Collins from LSU. Hard-hitting player, reminds me of Tremont in a lot of ways. I think he's the type of player that could come in and start day one. Not that he'll be required to start day one, but I think he's got the ability to develop into that player, especially with the coaching that he would get with Joe Witt and in the Packers secondary. I think that he'd be poised to step in and make an impact right away. I love Marcus Peters. I think Marcus Peters would be the type of player that he could end up being one of the best players to come out of this draft. I really believe that if he goes to the right locker room. And so I think that I think when you go through, you could run through a number of names there, but I think you could look at the top 100, and it wouldn't shock me if of the top 100, there could be eight to 10 or more very easily to be cornerbacks, which it'll lead to a very interesting approach for Ted Thompson as he enters the first round. Where is it wise to consider? Saying, hey, I'm going to be Ted Thompson. I love power and numbers. I got the spots I need to fill. Maybe you draft for the top 100, which means you trade out of the first round. You grab an extra second and a third. You grab a second and maybe an extra third, or I haven't dug deep enough, or maybe there's a team with 2 second-round picks that would give that for the number 30 pick. And it gives you an opportunity then to, when I watch the draft, I say, you have to win a couple rounds. The only way you can really be a victor in the draft, I believe, is to win a couple rounds. And, this year he's clearly in a position to where he could win the 6th round with 3 picks. And, he could put himself in a position, if he were able to trade down and accumulate multiple picks, to potentially win the 2nd round, right? And you win the first 100 picks with 4 players, and it might be that type of year where Thompson could add some good depth with the talent that we've got, or that is in the draft at cornerback. And then additionally, I think there's something there at inside linebacker. I really like Stephon Anthony. I think Anthony can play. He's an athletic beast, and it translates to tape. What you saw at the combine translates to tape. What's interesting is what doesn't translate from the combine to tape is Paul Dawson. And Dawson he's a guy that, man, I'll tell you, prior to the combine, Dawson was my guy for the first round pick. He reminds me when you watch his film, he reminds me a little bit of Bobby Wagner. Finds the football. You're playing in the Big 12. You have to, they're spread out as much as any league out there. And he's able to get sideline to sideline. He has great speed on the field. He had great quickness. He forced turnovers at Chris Borland type levels, right? At the college game, it was just it was great. He had great stuff throughout the year. He was a guy that you couldn't help but notice if you ever turned on the Big 12 and tried to watch anybody on the defensive side of the ball. It was like Dawson was the guy that jumped off the map at you, and he looked like he played with great quickness. And then you see him run. I think he ran a 4.9 at the combine, and that didn't add up. He plays faster than that, but it's one of those things that the clock didn't lie. But then if you abide by the philosophy that you how did the guy play when the lights were on? Well, Dawson was clearly a baller, and he showed up at big time moments, which I think is the type of piece that would carry over to the NFL.
So you mentioned that cornerback position in the draft. If there's one guy who makes it 30, who do you not trade back if they're still available? Which guy is your top cornerback?
Well, Waynes is the number one guy, but I would say that if Waynes is not, let's say Waynes is the only player at cornerback, which there's a very small possibility, I would say, but I do think it's possible that you could be sitting at number 30 and potentially, I don't see it, but it is a possibility, potentially have only one cornerback off the board. I don't see that, but you could make the argument if you pencil through it. You look at what teams' needs are. I could see Pittsburgh drafting corner. I could see Indianapolis drafting corner. I could see Philly drafting corner, right? Just to throw out a couple of teams. But let's say if Just Waynes is off the board, and Peters is there, and Kevin Johnson's there, and Collins is there, and Rollins is there, and P.J. Williams is there, and Byron Jones, and Eric Rowe. You got a bunch of players that Darby, I think from Sanford or from Florida State as well. You get all these players that are. There's something to like. I don't necessarily like them all as much as maybe some others do, but there's something to like. Well, then I think it could be attractive to trade down. So I guess it's not to be evasive on the question, but I think at that point you need to take a look at, okay, who's all off the board, and if there's still an abundance of corners that you kind of like and not one of them just jumps off at you. I personally like Peters the best, but I understand if his character concerns are enough of a red flag to where you're just not going to draft him. I also, after Peters, it's my guy is Jalen Collins, but I wouldn't be heartbroken if Collins was on the board and they didn't draft him and they traded down 6 to 8 picks, and then 6 to 8 picks later we're able to get a guy like potentially a Byron Jones, right? Or a Kevin Johnson. I think being able to add another pick would be a crucial thing, as I do think that there is some value with power in numbers.
I want to stay for a moment on the kind of character thing, because as everything has been so much amplified, whether it's social media or just the scrutiny, about the Jameis Winstons and the questions that come in and who signs who and the recent Greg Hardy development. And I know you talked about Percy Harvin to the Packers and talking about, bringing in a strong locker room and that scrutiny. And I don't know how to frame the question, but I guess just balance of who's the guy you think can come in that the Packers way, if you want to put it that way, could trump, someone malcontent. I mean, I got to say, I kind of feel, I don't want to say disagree with you, but like the Percy Harvin thing seems like he's almost just like, he's kind of one of those guys that is not going to change for a team. But then draft time, when you hear about all the questions that are asked about, we heard some of the questions that Jeff Ireland asked. I think it was Des Bryant. How much scrutiny is given into the off the field stuff. I mean, what do you see how Ted does that? Because he's been willing to sign some guys that maybe have some past issues, quote unquote. But how much in your mind, when you're watching a player or scouting a player, does that make you say, I'm not going to watch him because X, Y, Z, or I'm going to look past it? Or, I mean, how do you factor in the stuff that's not measurable or the things you can watch?
First and foremost, I think it's, for anybody who's lived in Green Bay, Wisconsin, that it's kind of hard to get in trouble in Green Bay, Wisconsin compared to other places that the NFL is. So I think that's one plus for the Packers. And the community embraces its players. There's no other. Right? And I don't think that's debatable. So I think that's a plus for being able to draft or pay attention to a player that might have a checkered past in some way, shape, or form. Further, what I'd say is everybody questioned Randy Moss. People questioned Charles Woodson's attitude when they were both with the Raiders. Look at how that worked out for Moss when he went to New England. He had arguably the greatest receiving year a receiver has had. Right? You look at what Woodson did when he came to Green Bay. And, the thing about playing football in Green Bay, which I think is different in other places, is there isn't the glitz and the glamour of in life or the Hollywood type feel of cameras when you step outside of Lambeau Field. Football is life there. And I think that makes it a more welcoming environment. And because of that, you can look at the players that, Thompson's he took a chance on Corin Robinson. He took a chance on bringing Jolly back. He with Colt Lierlo last year. You see Guyon is back with the Packers. So I'm starting to. I'm of the belief that because of the community in Green Bay, which is just generally such a positive and embracing and warm culture, I become less concerned about a guy's past, depending on what it is. Now, if you look at Peters, he's a young guy. He's a brash, confident guy with a ton of swagger. I would think a guy like Peters would be able to come in, check his ego at the door, and you walk Julius Peppers up to that guy and say, "Welcome to the team, rookie," and instantly that attitude inside the locker room is checked to the side. In my opinion, maybe I'm crazy, but I do think that there's a couple of really special locker rooms in the NFL. And I'd headline that with maybe the Packers and the Patriots, and think that that players can maybe check their ego at the door a little bit more with those two organizations. Maybe the Steelers as well, to a degree, than maybe it has happens in with some other organizations. And I'd become less concerned about their character concerns.
So to get back to linebackers, and I guess character did some of that dissuade you from taking up Paul Johnson? Please.
Not at all. Not at all. The only thing that I get concerned about is the 40 time. And if his 40 time would have showed at, even though again it doesn't translate to the tape, if his 40 time would have been what Stephon Anthony did, I think people might be talking about Dawson as a top 15 to 20 pick. That's what the tape shows. But the 40 time at the combine, it hurt him. And I will. I don't think that can even be debated. As far as how we're, the people that like us sitting here and we're just average Joes, right? Just who love the game of football. We aren't evaluated or compensated on our ability to judge players, right? So the reality is nobody knows, but what really was going on inside, the offices at 1265, or where they may or may not have had Dawson ranked prior to the combine, and where they've got him ranked now. But just from what you see from a widespread voice, if you will, of people that do get paid to talk about the combine and the NFL draft as a whole, I fancy that he would be projected to go in the top 15 to 20 of his picks if his 40 time was that of, say, Stephon Anthony's. That's just what my gut says. But character concerns with Dawson, I have none. I saw him as a leader on the field. I saw him as a guy that was, fist bumping with teammates and really active in the huddle. And a guy that in many ways took command at the line of scrimmage on the defensive side of the ball and seemed as a guy that could potentially be a defensive quarterback, for what that's worth.
Nice. I guess let's kind of stick with the inside linebackers for a second. Eric Kendricks, he's showing up on a lot of mock drafts as going to the Packers, but other people might be better as like an outside backer in a 4-3 defense. What are your thoughts on Kendricks?
Put him on the football field and let him play. Tell him to go find football. I think he's a stud. He can do almost everything. I like Anthony better than Kendricks because I think Anthony can get to the quarterback, and Capers loves to blitz those inside linebackers, and I think that Anthony can do that better than Kendricks can. But Kendricks he's stellar in pass coverage, from a linebacking perspective. I think he's smart, understands angles. I think he sniffs plays out, doesn't bite on the screen from what I've seen, and I did get to watch a fair amount of UCLA football. You got to remember one of the benefits of living in Mountain Standard, time is, well, the rest of America is going to bed. We're kicking up and popping a pint, and it's a 8:30 or 9:30 kickoff for us, so you can still enjoy the game, or the majority of it, anyways, right? So where others are going to bed, we get to watch, if not the entire game, well, 2 to 3 quarters of the game, and be able to make an assessment. And Kendricks just week after week made good plays and is really an active defender and somebody that I think will have a really strong NFL career.
We all know Teddy. It's kind of the third, fourth, fifth, sixth round is where he makes his money. Is there just kind of a couple guys who aren't the marquee players, but a couple guys who, in the course of watching and looking, that you're really got the eye on and kind of hoping that this guy's back, or that who knows draft sheet out, but that these guys have done the homework, and that you're kind of excited maybe a prospect in those later rounds.
Junior Silvestre is a guy that I love this guy, man. He has so much speed, and he finds the football. You just know that he's going to end up in Pittsburgh. Linebacker, the team that consistently drafts linebackers, and they do the best job of assessing it. I just really think that he's Silvestre has speed. He gets sideline to sideline. He's maybe just a touch undersized, but going back to what I said earlier about Buchanan, or a role that I think Sean Richardson could play. Somebody who may be too big for safety, clearly too big for safety, but maybe has in a little smaller than you might like your inside linebacker. But he changes down ball carriers. He's relentless in his effort and his pursuit, and he's one guy that I really, really like. In a guy that has climbed the ranks in a couple of websites that I take a look at is Xavier Cooper, who now probably, from what I see in all projections, likely going to be a second round pick from what I see online. I've seen him as a second round pick all year. And I could even make an argument that it's first round talent, just a quick twitch. I think when you look at defensive line, and going back to how I watch players with defensive linemen, one of my biggest things is how do they get off the snap? You can look at KGB. KGB back in the day for the Packers got off the snap so darn quick that he didn't give an offensive lineman a chance. Cooper, I think he doesn't have the same speed that maybe a KGB or a guy like a Charles Haley had, or DeMarcus Ware has, but he can play on the inside, and he is quick off the snap. I think he's got great versatility. He could play in a 4-3. I think he could step outside potentially at times and really put some pressure on the quarterback. And I really think a guy like Xavier Cooper is going to be an interesting name to watch. I think David Johnson from Northern Iowa, running back, is I am so impressed by this guy. Reminds me a lot of Matt Forte. Great hands out of the backfield. Great one-cut runner. He's as a running back, I always like to look. First of all, can the guy catch the football? If he can, gives another dimension that you have to look out for. Is he a patient runner? And when he see the hole? And I think Johnson sees the hole real well. I think he's got great patience, and when he decides to go, he's got a burst attached to him. So those are a couple of names that just off the top of my head that jump out at me that aren't necessarily that guy that is going to be a top. And if you look at most people, they aren't going to have him as top 50 players. I think Johnson is likely a third or a fourth round pick. I see Sylvester as maybe a sixth round pick, potentially a seventh round pick, and Cooper will probably be a mid to late second round pick, and it wouldn't shock me if he's a name that people see drafted much earlier than what has been projected via mock drafts previously.
I gotta ask, or kind of explain to the boy, because I have a pet theory about the evolution of kind of defenses and perhaps 11 players on defense along, a Clay Matthews we talked about, and we've seen the secondary getting bigger and kind of linebacking core getting more mobile and swifter and kind of those body types almost merging. I mean, what have you seen as far as, interest from teams and where the trend is going and teams wanting those bigger bodies in the secondary and wanting kind of what Seattle has done with their linebackers as far as being, sideline to sideline and everything, and where the size, physicality, and I guess how defenses are evolving as far as personnel?
It's a great question, and I think that the number one piece that you can't teach is speed. Can't teach speed, and you just look at the Packers' defense and what changed as the season went along. It was speed. I also think that there's the way that the NFL, that defenses are limited in the way the NFL game is called. And then you look at all the concussions that we've seen through the years. I think we're seeing more alligator arms these days from a receiver than we've ever seen. And it's funny because it's at a time that, safeties and inside linebackers are limited at just ridiculous levels. From the fans' perspective and from an entertainment perspective, where the inside linebackers and safeties, as players are coming across the middle, they're just limited. But it's the intimidation factor, and I think that's always been there. At least since I've watched football and from the film that you see from before my time, that's always been there. I mean, it's Ronnie Lott and Steve Atwater and in the 80s into the 90s, and just that big body, John Lynch, and in the middle of a defense, and safeties is just, it's long been, I think, an underappreciated position by maybe the writer and the fan, and I think that shows in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. But you can look at a hallmark of a great defense is, there's always been a stud in the middle of the field. And, when you see that big, that big safety that intimidates if somebody's coming across the middle, well, that becomes a real telling piece, from an intimidation perspective. So, I think speed in the middle of the field as teams continue to spread you out has become more of a pressing matter, so that somebody can step out, an inside linebacker can step out and at least get his hands on a slot receiver in the first 5 yards to try and throw him off his route. That has become a crucial part of being able to play defense in the modern NFL.
Well, to quote Monty from Packers, something else you cannot teach is fat.
What did he say? That you can't teach is what?
You can't teach fat.
Fast, yeah. Well, you can't.
So FFAT.
Oh yeah. Yep.
So I guess Ted likes to grab at least one or two per draft. Fond of saying the good Lord only made so many guys with that body type. Do you think there's a fair chance that they grab a D lineman early on?
I am of the belief that in this year's draft, if the Packers were, you got 9 picks, and if I were Ted Thompson, I would use 8 of those picks on the defensive side of the ball, and I would draft a tight end. And I just think that it's a real crucial off season for building the depth on the defensive side of the ball. You can look at the offense right now, and for the next 2 years, the shape of this offense is just, it's in, from a depth perspective, it's terrific. Yeah, Rodgers is going to be there. The offensive line is all intact for the next 2 years. Shredder's intact as a backup. Barclay's there this year. He'll be an unrestricted free agent the following year. They'll have first dibs at Barclay. Might end up letting him go because I think he could get some money and draft and give a compensatory pick that Thompson's going to be loving. You could at wide receiver they've got Cobb and Adams and Nelson and Aberdaris and Janis. Well, at a bare bones minimum, they'll all be there for the next 2 years. At tight end, you do have Rodgers, who really showed a lot over the last 4 to 6 weeks of the year. At Corliss, I believe, is in his last year this year. But so they need to add a tight end. But on the offensive side of it, and then a running back, you got Lacey. I know Starks is going to be a free agent after this year, but I believe in this Reggie O'Neal. I really liked him coming out of college, and I think in with the Packers' style, you can find a running back off the street or as an undrafted free agent to continue to stack the depth there. So I don't have the worry on the offensive side of the ball from a depth perspective, but on defense, they have question marks on as from a depth perspective as to what the future is going to be on the defensive side of the ball. So when you ask about the defensive line and could they draft somebody early, I'd absolutely say yes. And I would say that if you look at the defensive side of the ball, and you're to say, next year at cornerback, well, Hayward's going to be a free agent. And soon you're going to have Hyde has 2 years before he's a free agent. So you need to look at corner, but on the defensive line, you've got, you can see, hey, well, Raji is going to be a free agent after this year. Guyon's going to be a free agent after this year. Daniels is going to be a free agent after this year. What's that? It's scary. Yeah. So these are all. This is. I mean, it's real talk, right? It's real talk. So. I look at it and I think that the Packers absolutely are gonna have to attack the defensive side of the ball, and I wouldn't have a problem if their first 3 picks. In fact, I'd be excited if their first 3 picks were defensive line, inside linebacker and cornerback, and a lot of where you draft those the players depends on where people fall and who's available at what time and when it happens. But I absolutely do envision a scenario in which the Packers do draft defensive line early. A guy like Carl Davis I think fits. I think going back to another name, by the way, that I liked his teammate, that Louis Trentz. I thought that he was a decent player as well. He's projected, I think, as a 5th to 7th round player. I think he's the type of guy that might be a good value late. And you all know Ted Thompson likes his kids from Iowa. I think that those are 2 names that I look at. Another guy that I think you have to pay attention to. I think Malcolm Brown is I think Malcolm Brown and Jordan Phillips are 2 very similar players. Both kind of remind me of a young Ryan Pickett. Not super, not going to be super quick laterally, but fairly quick, surprisingly quick, moving straight ahead. Got great power. You get more pass rush than you may imagine, but that's not what they do. They're just run pluggers, run stuffers, and I think both those bodies look pretty good in the middle of the Packer defense for the future. A couple of names that might intrigue. Another mid to late round pick that I'm kind of impressed with is Joey Amu from Houston. He's another name that I think could be one of those middle round picks that the Packers that might fit what the Packers do, so to speak. I know there's a lot of talk about a guy like Grady Jarrett being a fit for the Packers. What's interesting about Jarrett is when he gets going, his first couple steps, man, you watch that stuff, and he looks like he's got Pro Bowl moves there. But the problem is getting back to this, how quick does a guy get off the snap? It's like it takes him a second to move his legs, but right when he starts moving, he's quick, he's elusive, and he's got a variety of moves that can get himself into the defensive or into the offensive backfield. So, I think there's definitely some players that intrigue. I would say that there's, as far as just people that just jump out at you and you say, wow, I got to have him. The guy that outside of Shelton who just won't be available, and Leonard Williams will not be available.
Yeah.
But I'd say Davis from Iowa would be my number one target at the defensive side of the ball at defensive line.
No worries. Fatigue issue with Davis?
I think a lot of that, can be somewhat overrated. I think that it can be. You never know what happened at his, inside the locker room of Iowa, and generally they've had a great history of really producing first class individuals, and people with the right mentality. But I'll tell you, when you watch Davis, when his quote unquote lights were on in the in the Senior Bowl, I believe it was, he was a stud, and he might have been the best player on the field. It's plainly put. So, you never know. Iowa didn't have as great of a football team as they've had in past years. He's a college kid, and you never know if maybe he lost a little focus or what happened. Iowa's got a rich football tradition, and it seemed like last year might have been a little bit of a hiccup from the program that we're used to seeing. And they had some conflict. Believe they had some issues at quarterback with that have carried over into the off season this year. And you just never know what was all going on there. And if maybe guy, I don't want to say he lost maybe a little focus, but if maybe football wasn't just I don't want to say as important, but maybe he just wasn't as in tune with the game as maybe he could have or should have been, but that might have been a product of Iowa rather than a product of him. And I don't know. I'm just making a guess, but I do know that when Davis played in the postseason All-Star game, he was an absolute stud. Another name that I don't ever hear anybody talking about, but I've become a little partial to West Coast football through as I've moved to Colorado, and it's Tyler Davison, and defensive lineman from Fresno State, who they had a couple good ball players this year, and I sat down to watch Davison probably 3 times this year, maybe 4, and made a lot of impact plays in the middle of the field. He's got a quick twitch move to him as well. Very active with his hands, gets off the snap. Big guy. And don't have it in front of me, but if memory serves me correct, between 315 and 320, and but just moves really quick. And think you could put him right in the heart of a 3-4 defense, and he'd be a real good rotational defensive lineman early in his career and be able to make an impact this year. So, I guess he'd be another name that I'd throw in the mix as the players that I'd be targeting as potential additions in the defensive side of the ball.
And then just the other note tackles you mentioned, Jordan Phillips out of Oklahoma and Grady Jarrett out of Clemson. Some body type, but I guess would be less prototypical for a 3-4 loose tackle. Jordan Phillips is 6'5", and Grady Jarrett is 300 pounds. So a little tall and a little light, respectively. But you think those guys would you be excited about taking either of those guys at 30?
It depends on how they're. Jarrett at 30, no way.
Okay.
It's my take is Jarrett has a little bit of Jarrell Worthy to him, and I think that he might just be a better fit for a 4-3. than for a 3-4. And I wonder, things didn't work out with Worthy. He clearly got hurt, and I wonder if he was utilized right when they had him standing up on the outside. That's just not what Terrell Worthy did college game when he was effective. And I just wonder where they would put Grady Jarrett. Now, could he play a role kind of similar to what Mike Daniels plays? Maybe. I don't think he's got the brute strength or the brute force that Daniels has. But if Jarrett was around in the second round, and he's got that, he does definitely has he can beat you with quickness when he gets going. If you can teach the guy to get off the snap a little quicker, I think he could really develop into a real solid player. There's no doubt about it. But he kind of has the feel of a guy that's going to end up maybe in like a place like Seattle, and and you jam him in the middle of that 4-3, and he uses his quickness and he beats you off the snap there. But I don't know. I would be. I don't think I would like Jared at number 30 at all. It's as far as Phillips is concerned, he is just a big body. And when you look at what some of the quotes that happened. Well, I want to say this was before they drafted Dayton Jones, where they just wanted to have more length and that deep up front. You almost have to wonder if that's something that is still in the minds of the Packer, defensive locker room or defensive team room from a meeting perspective. If his 6'5" frame in the middle of a defense would be an attractive piece of the puzzle, and I guess I can't say I'd have a problem with it in the first round, but I'm not 100% convinced that that's the guy that I want the Packers to be, selecting in the first round. I will say this: you asked me earlier if there's ever been a guy that the Packers have selected where you had you jumping up and down with excitement that the Packers took him. I can't say he would be that pick for me right now if he was the pick at number 30. And if he's on the board there, at number 30, and along with a couple of other cornerbacks and or maybe a Malcolm Brown as well, might be a good time to take a look at that at stepping back for 6 to 8 picks if there's someone nibbling to get up to grab somebody. One last piece on that potential trade down take that I could have mentioned earlier and didn't was that one of the interesting pieces of this draft is I think if you look at mock drafts, there's much more uncertainty this year than there has been in past years across the board, starting at number 2, right? And it seems like for the most part, unless a trade happens, Winston's going to be number 1. But beyond that, there is just absolute uncertainty across the board. And, you look at it, the one thing that this draft is really, really missing is that quarterback that somebody might want to trade up to get at the end of the first round. Because with the new format, they don't want somebody sleeping on the thought of trying to trade up for the first pick in the second round, which is an interesting draft strategy and one of the reasons why I love the new 3-day format. But there isn't that player there, so I fancy that there's a very good possibility that the number 30 pick or the number 28 to 32 might have a lot less intrigue from somebody wanting to trade up to get a player because there isn't that quarterback that might entice somebody to make a move.
Right on. And about that, and as you said, you'd be pretty happy if the Packers devoted the majority of their defense. That being said, you top tight end, there are a couple guys that seem to be potentially late first round. You got Max in Minnesota, who's kind of got the bloodline. His dad was a Giant. Grandpa was there. You got Nico out of Florida State, who played with no gloves, which is pretty sweet. And then you've got Clive Walford out of Miami, who, by all accounts, is a blocker to be a real asset in the run and pass game. What are your thoughts on the tight end class? As far as, it's one of those guys who are available at 30. Do you neglect defense with that round pick?
I personally believe that defense just has to be the pick. I will say that the only one of those guys that would remotely intrigue me at 30 would be Max Williams. I think if you watch Max Williams, he played the exact style of tight end that the Packers used. They used him in the backfield some as sort of an H-back. They used him just off the line of scrimmage as a blocker. He came in motion late to lay cutback or the cut block. He got down the seam. He was a target inside the red zone, which you can never have enough red zone targets, as we saw in the NFC Championship. Not to deliver a low blow to ourselves, but punching it in is the last 5 yards are sometimes the hardest yards to get, and Max Williams is clearly a red zone target and would be another toy for McCarthy to have as he was drawing up plays in a shed. But I look at Williams as a guy that absolutely fits what the Packers do, and might be one of the few offensive players that I could be excited about if the Packers selected somebody in the first 2 rounds on the offensive side of the ball. Walford is he's a guy. I lived in Miami for 8 years or more, and you can't help but live in Miami and become a Canes fan. It's part of it. And Clive Walford is a guy that he's going to have a better NFL career than he did a college career. He can get down the seam, good hands, very, very good blocker, plays fast. One of the things that I look at it, from a tight end perspective is how does he find the hole in the zone? And Clyde really sits down well from my eye, and he's just a good target, and I really think he could have a nice NFL career. Big boy. I think again, don't have any stats in front of me here, but I think he's roughly 6'4", 250 pounds or so, just a big guy, and can get down the seam, and you look at what Rodgers is missing maybe right now on the offensive side of the football is a guy who can run down the seam and stretch the defense from the down the middle of the field. And I know Richard Rodgers did a lot of really, really nice things, as I said earlier, over the last 4 or 6 weeks. But one of them we didn't see was him running between the hash marks and stretching, testing the speed of inside linebacker or taking a safety out of the play. That was not one of the things that we saw, and I think that Clive Walford could do that. O'Leary as well. I think O'Leary's a guy that maybe is a little underappreciated. Old school football player. He too can, like Williams, he can play the H back. He's got great hands, above average blocker. Going to give you everything he has each and every play. And he's more of a guy for my eye. I don't see him as a first or a second round pick by any stretch of the imagination. Maybe I will be completely off there, but I see O'Leary as anywhere from a 4th to a 6th round pick. I'm more impressed, frankly, as with Jeff. I'm not even positive as how to pronounce his last name. Is Hireman from Ohio State? I think he's another big body, maybe underutilized, and will probably have a better NFL career than he did a college career, and could end up being a weapon for some people and a true safety valve for whatever quarterback he ends up playing with. But those are a couple of names that jump out at me. Boyle from Delaware, I think, is another guy who showed well in the All-Star games past post the season where you got an opportunity to sit down and watch him. Looked like he was a big body with real sure hands who could catch as well. So, those are, I guess, would be some names that jumped out at me and could be potential targets for for the Packers. One last name, I guess, that just jumped out that I guess is Notre Dame has had a great string of tight ends, and Ben Koyak is a guy that good football player, real strong blocker. Packers could use some more muscle, sealing the edge at tight end. And he too, sure-handed guy, sits down in the zone. Not going to be the guy that stretches the field like Clive Walford would, but definitely a player that could make an impact for the Packers early on.
So it sounds like you're more interested in. I mean, you see so much of the trend going to the pure pass catchers at the tight end position, as opposed to the traditional good body and good skill set blocking, some catching, and so on and so forth. You kind of prefer to see more of a traditional tight end that has a full skill set, as opposed to one of those super athletes at that tight end position, a Gronk or Jimmy Graham or something like that.
The Packers miss Tom Crabtree, and they'd miss a blocker, man, and they miss that he's almost like an extra offensive lineman, but a guy who can also step out and catch a pass, right, and move the sticks on 3rd and 1 and a little dump out into the flat, right, or a guy who catches a little 3-yard pass on first down and makes contact with the defender and barrels forward for another 2 to 3 yards. So instead of looking at 2nd and 7, they're looking at 2nd and 4 or 2nd and 5. Big plays in a football game that oftentimes don't get analyzed by fans or talked about. Crabtree did those things for the Packers. And I think that you call me crazy, but in some ways, the Packers missed Crabtree almost as much as they missed Finley, just based on as many offensive threats as the Packers have out at wide receiver in the year that Adams had, and the year that Cobb had, and the year that Nelson obviously had, and frankly, I think that Richard Rodgers is going to evolve into a really, really nice receiving tight end, and he's not going to be Jimmy Graham or Gronkowski, but how many guys do they make like that? And there are not many. And I just look at it and I think that the Packers' running game could really benefit from a tight end that helped open up holes. And I think that their lack of a tight end to be able to play that has allowed a guy like Kuhn to sign for another year, who's Kuhn's a great locker room guy, clearly respected by the team, and it sounds like in a Packer folk hero, right, amongst the fans. But the reality is part of the reason that Kuhn continues to be on the roster is because Kuhn is they don't have a tight end that can slide back and play that H-back position in block with great certainty. So I think that's a Kuhn too, a free agent after this year. I think that's going to be a position that needs to be addressed, and I'm based on what I saw from Richard Rodgers as a blocker, I'm not positive that he grows into that position, in the near future.
So what you're saying is the answer is we need to trade for Tim Tebow.
There you go. You got it. You drilled it. We should probably trade the number 30 pick to Philadelphia for Tim Tebow.
Oh my God.
You may as well unretire Bart Starr's number 15 and just give that to Tebow while we're at it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Dude, Scott, too cool of you to join us. Been awesome that you keep on with Harrison every month, and really look forward to your updates. You are an awesome approach. More Packers fans need to get on board. I mean, the time you put in and how Packer-centric your college football viewing is, I mean, it's a huge asset to us as fans, and We really appreciate you coming on the show. And
One more bit of insider that I like for anybody who's moving there or is visiting there. What do you say is the your go-to Packers bar, or, place to hang out with fellow Packers fans in Denver?
Well, that's my basement. There is there is a Packers bar, I believe it's called Swanky's, and it's right by Coors Field. Beautiful place. They really give you a beautiful place for watching Packer games. They really give you a Packer experience there. Got the Summerfest flags hanging inside. It's really they sell the cheese curds. It's a Wisconsin feel to it, and it's really cool. And I guess, I'd say thank you guys for having me on. I would say that one of the things that really inspires me to continue to carry on in the way that I do is I think the internet has made people become really feel tougher, or maybe cooler than they might be, and the access that we get to players on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook or whatever it might be has really, I think it's changed the way people have become fans, and there's too much negativity. There's too much hate that is spread in quick fashion. When ultimately these players are not robots; they're people just like you and I, and they aren't perfect and they make mistakes. And it's too many people go at these athletes and in an unfair approach on social media. And the thing that inspires me to continue to carry on in the fashion that I do is I'm a Packer fan, and my approach towards the internet or blogging is to take an optimistic but realistic approach as to the current state of the union of the Green Bay Packers. And I've got no interest in associating with or dealing with people that might be offering or spitting hate or negative vibrations towards the organization that frankly keeps the homeland that in my place of birth as an epicenter of America in my mind. It's Titletown, USA for a reason, and I would just encourage anybody that is in any sort of social media or blogosphere to keep it as positive as possible when talking about the Green Bay Packers, because one of the unique things that surrounds the great franchise that is the Green Bay Packers is the spirit of the fan and the uniqueness of the connection between fan, organization, and player. And I don't want to see that get jeopardized. And I do get the sense when I go to other stadiums, and I go to and I go back to Lambeau, and I see the way that other teams and fans interact with their players on social media, and I see the way that the Packers fans interact with their players on social media or react after a tough loss. And I think that Packer fans have in some ways done an injustification to themselves and to the organization and the pride that is around the South in Green Bay, Wisconsin, with the way that they reach out to people. So keep things positive, keep things optimistic, and be stoked to say that you're a fan of the Green Bay Packers. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And, next time you're back in GP, hit us up. Love to take out for a decent local beer. We got some good local breweries popping up around here. But that being said, I'm sure you must see the upcoming schedule that there is an Packers Broncos game in your neck of the woods. You plan to go for that?
There's no chance I'd miss it. I've already got it lined up. I'm going to be flying back to the Packers Steelers preseason football game. My in-laws live in Wheeling, West Virginia, which is about an hour away. So I'll be going to the Steeler game. I'll try to get it lined up to go to the season opener against Chicago in Chicago. My aim will be, obviously, I will 100% be at the Bronco game, and then I'm hoping to also fly back for the Packer Cowboy game. So if everything works out in my favor, I will be at I'll be able to see the green and gold and it's Super Bowl 50 this year, right?
Yeah.
The Super Bowl 50 champions will I'm hoping to be able to take in a couple games this year.
Awesome. Well, let's plan a chat before then, or maybe getting you a live interview FaceTime when you're back here in the motherland.
That's the truth, brother, man. Well, good stuff to you guys, and go Pack, go.
Hey, Scott, real quick, man. Give me your pre-draft, day after the schedule came out, regular season prediction.
16-0, is it okay to say? I don't know, right? Like, if you look at my blog, I never predicted Packers loss. I just can't bring myself to do it. So, I haven't taken a look at it that way. There's so much changes between today and week 1. Who would have thought last year that the Bears would have been a 5-11 team? There are a lot of people that projected them to be a Super Bowl contender. So much changes between now and the beginning of the year. I get it's fun to sort of look at it from afar and to do that projection. With me traveling today, I haven't had the opportunity to be able to really sit down and do that. But and a lot depends on the draft. And we have 27 roster spots to fill. We have almost a third of our roster to fill out. We have no idea who the third cornerback's going to be. We have no idea what's happening at inside linebacker. There's a lot of questions that need to be answered, and I think that I'll be able to take I would take a better look at that maybe after the draft. But I've never lived in a world where I'd predict a Packer loss. So for today, if we're on this thing, I haven't looked at it enough to project a loss, so I'll say 16-0. How about it?
Thank you so much for that, Scott. Cool, man.
Be good, guys. Good vibes to you, and go Pack, go. Let's hope for some good things. Who do you guys have projected as the Packers' first round pick?
Oh, dude. I don't know. I have such a hard time for wanting them to go cornerback when I think of Terrell Lee and Ahmad Carroll. But I don't know, man. I think one of those corners has to be there. I feel like if Max Williams is there, they're going to go Max Williams and then go up or up.
And the Mark Peters thing with them having the feeling that they can, is kind of talking about bringing him into the locker room and adjust him into Packer culture makes sense to take the talent off the type of off the field issues. Because I would still wave the flag for Johnny Slide Die. I made the first line jersey of Valley, even though he's not on the team anymore. But
Marcus Peters is the kind of guy, man, that if the Packers do draft him at number 30, it's time to do some toe touches, man. It's time to be excited, man. He is such an athlete, and if Ted Thompson's gonna select him in round 1 with as precious as he treats the NFL draft, that's going to tell me that he has thoroughly done his homework and he has checked every box of concern. And I'm going to be absolutely positive that he's going to be able to step in and hit the ground running day 1 from a mental and a personality perspective to be able to be successful. And his play on the field is never going to be questioned. And he's the type of guy that would come in and be an instant impact player year 1, which I think the Packers really need at that spot.
Brad. Dude, Scott, thank you so much, man.
No doubt. I enjoyed it. Go Pack, go, guys. Take care.
Safe travels, man. See ya. Later.
Boy, oh boy, Tom, what an interview that will be or was. Look at that. My beer is at the same height of liquid that it was. We really, continuity. Continuity, baby.
I'm totally confused right now.
Let me set you straight. Some other time.
Okay.
All right, we
Thank you,
promised
Scott.
it. Yeah, thank you, Scott. I'm sure that was a good interview.
Oh, yes.
I'm confident that it was. or will be. So, nope, that's not it. In that pocket, what do we have here?
We'll put this up on you for you big time because when we're looking down on it, you'll probably kind of want to look at it because it's really not fair. But this was released yesterday. It's a schedule, full schedule. And first impressions, initial reactions, looking for more things, love at first sight, knee jerk. What are your thoughts? What are you thinking?
I really like the schedule. Some years I look at it and I'm like, fuck. Some years I look at it and I'm like, cool, man. There's like the right amount of challenge. You've got a bye week that happens roughly halfway through the season.
Mike likes that.
Yep. We like Mike.
I want to be like Mike. Obviously, everybody's still getting the Seahawks at home. Starting away at the Bears.
Bring it.
That you load the back end, get to finish at home, that you start at the Bears. It does seem like a winnable game, the state of the Bears right now. We'll see what Fox can do.
Fuck John Fox, man. That guy always sucked.
But we'll see, it's the way it reads out. I mean, we have some good divisional matchups with the NFC or AFC West and the NFC West. That glut of division games.
Month of division games going down between late November and December.
With 2 Thursdays in a row.
Yeah, interesting.
And then some people are talking, big talk about this Thursday night Thanksgiving game against the Bears. Is there going to kind of be some turducken back? Is something like that going to happen?
No way!
I don't know.
Oh, man!
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know.
I mean, maybe if there's some type of, Madden passes it down, maybe. I mean, I'm just kind of thinking that would be kind of like a pretty big deal.
That would be fucking poetic, man.
Yeah, that'd be pretty awesome. The fans, the emotion, everybody's there, against a team like the Bears. So I think that would be pretty neat. We'll see. It hasn't happened in a while. Haven't seen it in a while. Hasn't been around Lambeau for a while, and some great years and memories back in the '90s. And so we'll see if that kind of happens. Who knows?
Jeez. Show some respect for John Madden.
Here's a guy. Interesting segue, though, talking about Madden to what is actually happening on that Thursday. Lorenzo.
One Brett Lorenzo Favre.
Awesome name. Another
so
awesome name that I saw today, Horus.
Horus, like the god, like the Egyptian god.
Was Horus?
Horus?
Horace as
like
Grant.
Horace Grant.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
God, yeah.
Cool name, strong name. I just kind of like the name Horace.
Orson, another good name.
Yes, it is. It is. Yeah.
Like you can't be skinny if your name is Orson.
No, at least not past 40 years old.
No.
Because Orson Welles was a striking young man, and then kind of the Brando thing happened, or I guess the Wells thing happened to Brando, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, you can't imitate the originator, or the other way around. Tom, we've beaten around the bush to a point.
But we must take a stand, man.
We must take a stand. What is it going to be? 16 games. How do the green and gold fare regular season 2015? Don't go beyond that. I don't want to know. What's their regular season record? I think these are Packer players fucking with us.
Yeah. Very good.
Come on the mic. Come on the mic and say it.
Come on now. I don't know if you. Oh no, you don't see them in the middle of the frame. Oh. Come on now.
Chris
getting a
Chris
little
Banjo. Flashers.
They have their hazards on. Our cameraman is busy running errands right now, so he can't really pan right now. But there is.
Tell the people.
Young white man. Okay.
That was definitely Rajon Neal. Definitely.
Yeah. There may have just been a pre-draft visit that we don't know about.
Oh.
Which was something Teddy kept under wraps today.
We did talk about that with Scott.
Yes.
Thomas, enough hullabaloo. Spit it out.
13-3.
13-3. I'll see your 13-3 and raise it 15-1.
Oh.
Tell me what game they lose other than that last game of the season against the Vikings. That doesn't matter. Tell me, what 3 games do they lose? Who do you have them losing to? I will never let you forget who you have them losing to.
Okay.
We might as well not even film those weeks because Tom thinks we're gonna lose.
You know what I'm going to throw? This game's similar to my little Bills game that I had the same premonitions about at Cardinals.
No.
No? You think that? It's a team. It's just like you think. Oh, Cardinals. Pff, oh, Bills. Pff, team with a good defense, good coaching. End of the year, you kind of had your eyes on the next step. Kind of, you're already looking ahead. You're not really focused. Who knows what's going to go on around there?
All
Just
right.
saying. We'll
Is that
see.
Bruce Arians' team. I mean, that was a Bruce Arians team that had that ridiculous comeback against us in Indy when Luck was a rookie, was it not? Where we were up like 21 points and fucking
He's a good coach.
He's a coach. He is.
Well, the 49ers, Rams, Chargers. I need to.
So you're at 15-1 right now.
Yes, I know it's not easy, and I know for full disclosure, what you said was going to be the one was final game against the Vikings.
Yeah, sure.
Shit. You know, I don't want to say it, but I'm gonna say the Seahawks.
I can't believe you said that, dude. Really?
Yeah.
You think home opener? Fucking home opener?
We'll see. We'll see.
Oh my God! Of all the fucking games. All right, you're at 14-2.
Love stirring up his blood.
Break my heart once more here, Tommy.
I will.
Ish.
It can't be them because
No, it can't be
Can't be
any of them except for that one.
You know, and it's. I'm not trying to disclaim here, but a lot has to happen for 15-1, and the schedule is right there.
I know. Let's throw all that shit out the window. This is a fucking team, man. This is such a good team.
It is.
This is such a good team.
It is. It is.
And they're better than all of those teams, and the only one that they're going to lose to is going to be the one where they don't
I'm going to
play.
say 22nd at the Vikings. Because and this may change, we'll see. But if Adrian has to play, and he is going to play for the Vikings for that final year, and whether he's paying for a contract, a guy that pissed off, hungry with a year layoff, I mean, the ACL thing coming back next year doing that, I think you either get a complete dud year or another oh my God year out of Adrian Peterson. And it could just be, I don't know. Who knows what Teddy Bridgewater Adrian Peterson comes with.
Yeah.
But so many losses aren't losses where you're just like two Titans go and lose. Sometimes losses are just like things went wrong. We'll see.
I don't know, man. Maybe I'm just not ready to talk about AP, but I'm not sure he's a Viking. And if he is, who the hell knows, man?
I have a hard time imagining if he is that he's going to kind of do the, play half-assed or not play at all. If anything, I see him wanting to assert his aggressiveness or whatever you want to call it on the field to show that, to take any pent-up anger and aggression. Everybody's talking about
that
how
will be
he's,
worked out by week, whatever the fuck that is. That's not worried about.
He's a different kind of cat.
Meh.
He's a different kind of cat.
Maybe he was. Fuck him. Not. We're not
He's
doing.
still angry at me about the Seattle thing.
That's yeah.
I can tell.
I haven't heard a word you've said since that
I
actually.
can tell.
All right. Well,
Maybe there's some psychology, the brain stuff that I'm going for. Why I picked that?
I don't know, man. We're gonna have to talk about this off camera.
That's
I think.
fine.
For Titletown Tommy Burns, I am Menasha Matty Day.
Menasha, oh, there's gotta be something I'm thinking.
I thought I had one.
There's gotta be a really good solid M Packers word.
I don't know. I was just going local, man.
Yeah. Should boy get shout outs, Menasha.
Guanago? Does that float your boat a little? Mequon?
Manawa.
Manawa.
I mean, you have the alliteration with McCarthy too, but.
Oh. At any
Anywho,
rate.
we have a lot to talk about. And there's more interesting things bubbling up, coming up. So while we are kind of waiting, the draft will come and waiting for a training camp, there's kind of some interesting things going to be tossed around. So stay tuned and we'll bring that more as it comes. But for now, as you wrapped it up, it is it. So once again,
We have been live from Stadium Drive. Oh, baby.
Yes.
Ooh, baby, I'm back.
I'm back. I'm back.